Okay, let's go ahead and dive right in. So I had Greg who wrote in who said, "My wife is 60 and I'm 63. She's still very attractive, but has no desire for intimacy. I find myself curiously thinking if she's cheating on me. Am I overreacting?" And Greg, what I have to say to you is possibly you may possibly be overreacting. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on in your relationship, but if your wife is 60, most likely she is postmenopausal. And for some postmenopausal women, not all, but for some postmenopausal women, there is a very large decline in interest in sexual activity, a total drop in libido to the extent that for some women, the desire for sex completely disappears. Now, I don't know if that's been the case for you or not. There are things that a woman can do if she wants to start to bring her sexual vitality back online. Um, that's something that I do. I personally help and coach women with. I have a program that I'm running actually right now. It's coming up again in May to help women regain that sexual vitality and that drive for sex, sensitivity, orgasm, etc. But I don't know if that's your case or not. And I would sort of doubt that she's cheating on you if she has no desire for intimacy or sex, but there's also possibly something else going on. And I think number 1, if you're thinking this in your mind, but you're not having a conversation with her, that's a problem, and that's a relationship problem. That's not a sexual problem, that's a relationship problem. So as difficult as it might be for you to talk about what's going on in the bedroom, it's really the first place that we have to start. Now, I wouldn't necessarily suggest starting with, "Hey, are you cheating on me?" I wouldn't suggest starting there, but maybe beginning to talk about what is going on, that you still have a desire to be sexually intimate and you're curious about why she doesn't or what's going on her side. There can be a lot of different things going on. For a lot of women, if that emotional connection isn't there for them anymore, or I'm imagining maybe you've been together for a long time. I don't know how long you've been together, but sometimes over time in long term relationships, so much can happen that we can build up resentment about things that happened many years ago. And if we don't have a way to actually start to clear some of that resentment out, especially true for men and women, but in some ways more so true for women, our hearts harden and close off. It becomes very hard for us to want to open ourselves sexually if our hearts are closed, if we're closed off emotionally. So my suggestion to you, Greg, would be to find a way just to get curious about her and her experience, find out what's going on. And if you need to reach out for help, it may even just be reaching out to a couples therapist or a couples coach, someone just to help the two of you first start with communication before you dive into the sexual stuff. My feeling is that she's probably not cheating on you. It probably is a combination of other things that perhaps you haven't considered. So I hope that's helpful for you, Greg. Thank you so much for writing in. Excuse me. Okay, so I had another subscriber write in, and he says, "I had prostate cancer 4 years ago. It's all clear now, but at the time, I didn't have any sense to get checked earlier. I had my prostate removed. So the impact is that there's no more natural erections, no more ejaculating. And one would think that this has trashed my libido, but it's been quite the opposite. So despite my relationship being tight, sometimes it's difficult to talk about." Yes, and this subscriber I didn't get a name on this subscriber, but whoever you are who wrote this in, thank you so much for writing in and reaching out. And yes, I actually have some videos what I did with Sam Itstaki, who came on for one of my deep dive sessions a few weeks back. We talked about the penis pumps. And so for you, I would highly recommend looking into the penis pump because even though you can't ejaculate and your erections are challenged, the erections are really a blood flow event, and so the penis pumps can actually help to restore some of the collagen, can help to revive the tissues by pumping more blood flow into the penis, and can help to restore erections. They can be actually used as a way to get an erection prior to sexual activity, so I'd highly recommend that you check out the interview that I did with Sam Itzaki. I think it's called "Your Penis is Shrinking and What to Do About It," something like that. But that's there in the archives here on Shootin the Shit. So take a look at that and see if that's not helpful for you. And the other thing I want to point out here is we're sort of coming back around to another theme here that it's difficult to talk about. And what I really want to say to those of you who are here watching with me live, those of you who are watching the replay, is that it really begins with learning how to talk about the things that are uncomfortable. We have to learn how to talk about sex, our sexual relationship. We have to learn to talk about emotions, feelings, and our bodies. And I understand how hard that can be. I think even more so a lot of times for for men because there's so much of your identity that's involved with your erection, which makes total sense. And I think that's totally valid and completely fine. And so when things aren't really working the way you want them to down there, it can be very, very sensitive. It can be embarrassing. And what I want to offer to you is that if you can find a way what I would love to help you do is normalize this, that you're not the only man struggling with this. And if you have a supportive partner who you've been with, you said your relationship with her is tight, but sometimes it's hard to talk about this, I would bet to guess she's going to be very open to hearing. She's going to be very supportive. And I think there's nothing sexier than a man who's willing to get vulnerable, who's willing to show a little bit of a softer underbelly from time to time that can really help to deepen the bond in the intimate relationship. So I would just offer to you, I would start by talking about it with your partner and then starting to investigate some of the other solutions that are out there for you, such as the penis pumps. So thanks so much for writing, and I hope that's helpful. All right. And then we have Mike who wrote in, and Mike says, we'd love to get some education, some erectile dysfunction on my part, plus difficulty getting my wife aroused at the same time makes love making rather lackluster compared to what it used to be. We're in our 40s, so we're definitely not as young as we once were, but we are pretty healthy otherwise. And he says we have 5 children, ages 9 to 19, plus a house mortgage to keep after, plus. You know how life works. Absolutely, Mike. I do know how life works. It can be crazy. My life has been a little crazy lately, too. I know how it goes. And a lot of times what happens, I think, in particular, when you have the 5 children and the life stress, a lot of times our sex life actually kind of gets put on the back burner. It's at the bottom of the list if it's even on the list. So the first thing that I usually tell couples is you need to put your sex life, actually get it on the list. Like at least get it on the list along with everything else that's on the list. So that's a spot to start. And it may be for you, Mike, that you need to be a little bit more intentional around your intimacy time. So one thing I offer to my couples is to create what's called an intimacy date. Now, an intimacy date, I usually recommend, in an ideal world, I say set aside 3 hours. I know that might seem like a lot. If that feels like too much, I would say no less than 2 hours. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be doing something for those whole 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever you do. But we just don't we wanna have enough padding on either side of that intimacy date so that nobody feels rushed, so that we can just sink in and drop in and just be present. So I think an hour is usually too short. 2 hours is really the minimum that I would recommend. 3 would be even better. So starting a set every week where you have time with your wife and just your wife. Now, this is maybe while your kids are over, maybe they're playing at friends' houses, they're out of the house one way or the other. At friends' houses, they're at school, where you're really carving out time where you're not going to be distracted. You're not going to be worried about is someone going to come barging through the bedroom door? Or can we hear the TV going in the background? You really want to be able to make this sacred time just for the two of you where you know you're not going to be interrupted. Now, an intimacy date doesn't necessarily involve having penetrative sex or intercourse. That can be a part of it. But where I suggest you start is just by getting naked, so you're skin to skin, and then you're eye to eye and breath to breath, and just connecting through the body, through the breath, and through the eyes. Now, this is a non-verbal date. This is a non-talking date. We're not going to talk about the kids or work or what needs to happen on the house or the bank accounts. None of that. This is a chance really to be not largely nonverbal and just to connect in silence. And what you do during this intimacy date is you start to notice the sensations in your own body, noticing your breath, noticing the feel of the skin, the warmth of the skin touching, just beginning to bring your awareness to the skill of noticing. Noticing, as simple as it sounds, is really an incredibly fundamental skill. It's one of the pleasure keys and the pleasure keys process that I teach and that I developed. It's a very, very, very important key to pleasure because what happens when we start to simply notice sensation in the body, there's a part of our brain that lights up called the insula or the insular cortex. And what that part of the brain does is when we're very present and we're aware and we're just noticing sensations, what the brain does, the insula does, it says, hey, pay attention. Let's dedicate a little more real estate to this part of the body or this area. And it will literally, over time, create new neural pathways and new neural connections. So if you begin to pay attention simply to sensation in your genitals, for example, now both you and your wife can do this. and just start to notice what's there. It's okay if you don't notice very much at first, because what will happen over time as more and more real estate is dedicated to this area because you've been practicing awareness, holding your awareness, say, in the genitals, noticing whatever sensations are there, not trying to make sensation happen, but just noticing what's there. Over time, you'll be able to notice more and more. And this can be a really wonderful thing to have as a tool for overcoming erectile dysfunction. Now, ED can happen for a lot of different reasons. If there's been a lot of porn use, a lot of times ED is the result, is where a lot of men end up. There's reasons for that. And also, as we age, the blood flow starts to decrease into the genitals because the blood vessels shrink, the nerve endings shrink. And that can be solved by learning how to increase blood flow and tonifying and strengthening the pleasure core, the pelvic floor muscle. So this is something that I teach for women in my program called the Pleasure Revival Experience. I don't have a course for men. There's other great teachers out there who do teach men how to do some of these things. I teach it for women. But really what we're speaking to is that lack of blood flow. There could be other things. You said you're pretty healthy, which is great because diet and exercise are a big part of our erectile health as well. But long-term chronic stress is absolutely an erection killer. So you can oftentimes get by pretty okay through your 30s because your kidneys are still relatively strong. Your adrenal glands actually, which sit on top of your kidneys, and your kidneys, which actually store the sexual energy in the Chinese or Taoist world is called, I think they call it Jing. And the kidneys are actually a place that holds that sexual energy. It's like a transformer of that sexual energy. But as we age, especially when there's been a lot of stress in our 20s and 30s and raising kids and having jobs and mortgages, we start to deplete those energy reserves, but we're also depleting the cortisol in the adrenal glands. Over time, cortisol is no longer, we don't have enough of it. Number one, we're not producing as much as we did. And it's no longer enough for us to kind of ride on anymore. And so one of the results of that can be erectile challenges with erection. Cortisol itself actually is a killer of libido, by the way, because when we're in a high stress state and there's a lot of cortisol, chronic cortisol running through the bloodstream, that's fight or flight. That's not rest and digest, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. Pleasure, arousal, and erections, and even orgasm, I would say, live in the realm of the parasympathetic, where we're in the rest and digest. So, this intimacy date that I'm speaking to is an opportunity for you to start to practice how to relax, how to just start to notice sensation with no pressure for this to have to go anywhere. Because I'm just guessing, this has probably become an issue in your relationship. Like it's now a thing, and you're probably starting to get a little anxiety every time you go into the bedroom to try to be intimate. Now you're probably thinking, like, what if it doesn't work down there? Or what if it's working, but then she's not ready? And so that whole thing creates a cycle, a stress cycle, an anxiety cycle. When we're in anxiety, cortisol goes up and the erection goes down. So there's no pressure during these intimacy dates. It's really just meant to be a way to connect body to body, breath to breath, eye to eye. And hey, if turn on happens, if an erection comes online, that is welcome. Everything is invited. We're just not going to talk during this time and talk about the kids and analyze the problem or try to go into performance, into trying to make something happen or get somewhere. So that really is the intimacy date. So, Mike, I would just encourage you to give that a try. And thank you so much for everyone who's here with me live. It's so good to be back with you guys. So we'll be continuing forward with our lives every Friday at noon Eastern. I would love to hear your questions or the topics that you would like me to speak to. I'm also going to be bringing in guest experts starting on about once a month for our Deep Dive Wednesdays. So stay tuned for that. I'll be posting about it and sharing more with you. And until then, go get it on, and I will see you next time.